Welcome to Light Over Heat with Professor David Yamani. This week I have an excerpt from week 2 of my 7-week webinar, 10 Essential Observations on Guns in America. So please enjoy the excerpt. If you attended the webinar or watched the recording and you want to discuss the issues further, please do so in the comments here. If you are not registered for the webinar, there are still 5 more weeks, and you can also get the recordings of the first 2 weeks if you use the registration link in the show notes. Enjoy.
All right, so James writes observations 3 and 4. Let's first revisit, recall the first 2 observations that we covered, that half of the households in the country own at least one gun, and there are 200 million guns already in circulation in the United States, give or take a few tens of millions. We addressed that last week. His third observation is concerning those guns, right? That most of those 200 million guns are owned for socially innocuous sport and recreational purposes. And observation 4, and here's only part of observation 4 because we'll carry observation 4 over into the next couple of sessions. But the first part of observation 4 being many guns are also owned for self-defense against crime, right? And the evolution in gun culture from that third observation he makes about most guns being owned for innocuous sport and recreational purposes to the fact that most guns today are owned for self-defense against crime really gets at the heart of the evolution of American gun culture that I've spoken about under the rubric of gun culture 2.0. Now, I stole the concept of gun culture 2.0 from Michael Bain. When I first started studying guns back in 2012, 2011, 2012, I thought that I was just going to look at the concealed carry phenomenon as a kind of discrete thing that was happening. And as I learned more about concealed carry and as I got more involved in guns personally, I realized that concealed carry was just part of a broader shift that was happening in gun culture. And I was fortunate early on to listen to one of Michael Bain's podcasts in which he talked about the concept of gun culture 2.0. So I basically stole that idea from him. I started using it. I called my blog Gun Culture 2.0, and you can see on May 22nd of 2012, my sister's birthday, by the way, I posted my very first blog post about how I was getting into Gun Culture 2.0. So I was really concerned when later on, as I stayed involved in the study of gun culture, and I went to the NRA annual meeting for the first time, and I met Michael Bain, I sort of sheepishly let him know that I was the one who was stealing his concept of gun culture 2.0, and he couldn't have been more gracious, and he's always been a big supporter of mine and the work I do, and he's never felt any propriety about the idea of gun culture 2.0. But I do always want to give credit to Michael Bain for conceptualizing this change that was happening within gun culture that I sort of latched onto and then sort of brought into the academic study of guns. In one of my very first publications on the sociology of U.S. gun culture, I introduced the distinction between gun culture 1.0 and gun culture 2.0. And this quote here is just a short passage from this article where I say that hunting, target shooting, and collecting continue to be important aspects of U.S. gun culture today. But at the same time, the center of gravity of U.S. gun culture has shifted over the past half century from recreational shooting to armed self-defense, from gun culture 1.0, America's historic gun culture, to gun culture 2.0. So that is this evolution in a nutshell. And empirically, I think probably the easiest way to see this is in surveys asking gun owners, why do you own guns? And you can see even over a relatively short period of time from August 1999, when 26% of respondents in this Pew Research Center work said that they owned a gun for protection to February 2013, 48%, and declines in the other reasons as the primary reason: hunting, target shooting, that it's a constitutional right, gun collecting, and so on. And every survey that's been done more recently than 2013 has shown an increase from that 48%. So this National Lawful Use of Guns survey from 2019 showed about 60%, or nearly 60%, of gun owners said that defense was their primary reason for owning a gun. So if you think about James Wright publishing this article in 1995, he's in the early stages of the development of gun culture 2.0. But he's still understanding, as this first table shows, like the predominant reasons that people said they owned guns were hunting, target shooting, and collecting, those gun culture 1.0 activities. Now, important caveat about gun culture 1.0, and I do say it in that article that I mentioned, that these gun culture 1.0 activities are still part of gun culture. In a very simplistic reading of the gun culture 2.0 idea is that now gun culture is just defensive and these other things have fallen by the wayside. But in reality, it is about understanding what the center of gravity of gun culture is. Where's the core of gun culture, even though gun culture itself remains very diverse. But I'm reminded of the literary critic Kenneth Burke's idea that every way of seeing is also a way of not seeing, right? So the insight of gun culture 1.0 has as a liability that it may make it seem like these other aspects of gun culture are not relevant. And in reality, as we'll see in some of the data that I'll show in a bit, people own guns for multiple reasons, right? People don't just own guns for one reason. So, evolution and contours of gun culture 2.0. I did post an article that I published the last must have been in 2022 now, which really covers a lot of this ground in sort of the most systematic way that I've done since that original Sociology of U.S. Gun Culture publication. It's pretty dense, so I'll sort of review it for you here. And if I say anything that's of interest here, you might want to explore that article further. But the way I conceptualize the evolution of American gun culture is from a sort of gun culture 0.0, or we might say this is the baseline of American gun culture from about 1607, when people land in Jamestown, Virginia. They have guns with them all the way through about the middle of the 19th century. This is the kind of era in which practical considerations reign supreme. Then from the middle of the 19th century into the 21st century, gun culture 1.0, that recreational culture of guns, really becomes the center of gun culture. And then from about 2010 to the present, defensive gun culture sort of reigns supreme. Obviously, the growth of gun culture 2.0 begins before 2010, but I would say that the transition from gun culture 1.0 to gun culture 2.0 is clearly complete by 2010. But these are very rough datings, just sort of, this is a heuristic device. If you find it helpful, that's awesome. If you find it overruns some of the complexity of the reality, I fully admit that.